Get that. Our guest speaker tonight is DanSchwartz. Dan is running on the Republican ticket for Nevada State Treasurer. Dan is also an author of 2 books, The Principles of the American Republic and The Future of Finance, How Private Equity and Venture Capital Will Shape the Global Economy. Dan has over 35 years in the field of finance, and he has some very interesting and innovative ideas that, if elected, will move Nevada towards financial security. Dan, it's all yours.
First of all, thank you, Connie, for the invitation to come tonight. Probably most of you don't know who let me introduce my beautiful wife, Diane, over there. She deserves a lot, probably most of the credit. She goes along with me to make sure I know all the parking stops are and all. We actually lived here for about a year, so I know Connie has her anniversary tomorrow night. She said she's going over to Catherine's. So we were over there tonight, sort of enjoying some of the local cuisine. Also, I would be somewhat remiss. Being in this place, the Veterans Hall, I couldn't help but see we all gave some gave all, and that touches right here. I was in Germany. It was on Warhead Guard, but there are a lot of you. I don't know. Are there any vets in the hall here? I'm sure everybody, right? Good. So I'd ask you all where you all served, but we probably eating for the night here. But that hits right here, and my duty was light. But I know those of you who served in the war zone, you have my respect and deserve the respect of this country. And finally, I want to thank all of you for coming. You know, Connie sort of intimated this. Actually, I was talking with the gentleman over here. I'll talk a little bit about this later. You know, Dan, I've got some ideas and some programs that I'd like to initiate. And he said, well, you know, how can you do that? You're just the state treasurer, okay? And what I said to him is, I can do it because the state treasurer is an independently elected officer of the state. I have as much, I don't report to the governor. I don't report to any other, to the legislature. I do report to them in as much as they pass the budget. But you are my boss, okay? And that's the way I look at this position. If I don't serve you and I don't do what I say I'm going to do, it's on your, it is up to you to tell me that and to say, Schwartz, you either get it right or you get out. And I believe that. State treasurer is probably not uppermost in your minds, but it's an important office and one that frankly has been a political parking spot for a lot of politicians. I won't mention names of the individuals to protect the guilty, but the current state treasurer is simply running for Secretary of State. The lady who wants to replace her is now the state controller and is going to collect her paycheck in the state treasurer's office. It's my intent to really grow the office. I think those of you who are good Republicans, and I sense that hopefully all of you are, we have a real divide in our state right now. I'm also the state finance chairman for the NRP, the Nevada Republican Party. And we are bearing the brunt of this. We have a very popular governor, and we all have our personal opinions on him. They say, for the record, I support him and would like to see him reelected. I think his approval rating is something like about 57, 60%, which is high. On the other hand, our campaign did a poll, and the gentleman who did this poll is actually a Democrat. I mean, I think he's seen the error of his ways, but this is not a prejudiced poll. And Nevada voters are very unhappy. And you would think with a governor as popular as he is, everyone in this state would be very happy. Let me give you some stats from that poll. 47%, and this was done among 400 likely voters in the state. We haven't released this to the public, to the papers and all, but it's something that we have internally. 47% of likely voters feel that Nevada's economy is heading in the wrong direction. Whether you're part of that or not, you can come to your own conclusion. 47% of likely voters feel that Nevada has serious financial problems. By a 48% to 28% margin, voters feel that state finances are managed in a way that benefits political insiders. And I truly believe that now. Cite some facts on that. By a 45% to 27% margin, voters feel they are worse off than they were 4 years ago. That's a pretty hefty margin. Finally, and I think this is probably something that will resonate here, by a ratio of 2 to 1, 63 to 29%, voters feel that current elected officials are not responsive to the needs of everyday Nevadans. And I think in terms of why I'm running, just briefly on some of the qualifications, as Connie mentioned, I have 35 years of financial experience. I've been involved in all aspects of finance. What I find objectionable about the current treasurer and the lady who wants to replace her and I'm running against is neither one of them have any financial experience. The current treasurer is a great lawyer, which is nice. She does not understand how to invest. I mean, your treasurer is your chief financial officer, chief investment officer. I want to become the chief financial officer, but currently the treasurer is just the chief investment officer. And the lady who wants to come in, and are there any accountants in the room here? Good. Is an accountant, and I have an accountant. I use an accountant to do my tax returns. But that's very different than investing in the state's portfolio. Let me talk a little bit about some of the specific issues. I'm going to try and keep this short, and if you have questions, hopefully we'll put in time for that. We have a general fund, we being the people of Nevada. And this is about, what this is, it's the money that we, the taxpayers, pay. It's about $2 billion. This money should be invested at market rates. Okay, it is not. It has earned over the last year the princely sum of less than 1/2 of 1%. And I don't know if any of you have bank accounts or other income-earning assets, but that's a low number. But that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is, let's assume we have an inflation rate of 1%, which is also very low. Inflation is probably around 2%. Let's call it 1%. This lady is investing our money at a loss, and that's a pretty tough thing to do. You know, I have some of my own assets, and I have a hurdle rate of about 5%, which again is not very stellar, but at a negative 0.5% or 1%. Another issue, and this to me goes to one of the things I said earlier, and that is who's running the state and who are they running it for? The current treasurer set up what was known as a private equity fund. We don't need to get into that, but it's effectively a fund that invests not in listed securities, not GM or IBM, but in the securities of private companies. Okay. This is a $50 million fund which could be used for the people of Nevada. It could be given, I would like to give some of it to individuals. I'd like to take other parts of it to give it to people who are starting small businesses. I'd like to use some of it for tech startups. Right now, this $50 million is paying $1 million a year to a company called Hamilton Lane, which is an advisory firm. The only money that has been spent is to a company called Miller Hyman, who's in the interest of their company. If you look on the website, they're in the business of selling people. She clearly sold not only the treasurer, but probably the gentleman who signed off on it, which is our governor. That said, I'm supporting Brian, and I hope he wins. But I think we as voters need to understand exactly who and why we're voting for people. It's to me a real travesty. I mean, why is it in this state where by a ratio of 2 to 1, voters feel that the elected officials are not responsive to the needs of everyday Nevadans? Why is this money not being given to Nevadans? Instead of it's being shipped out of state. My third so you've got those two issues. My third and fourth issue, the third issue, I'd like to see the treasurer become the state's chief financial officer. So what does that mean? We're just playing with words? Is this just, what's in a title? Well, the title right now, specifically, I want to sit on the board of PERS. And I was talking with, I don't see her, she's one of the favorites. PERS is the Public Employees Retirement System. Now, I don't know, I assume we probably have some people here, maybe who are. My objective isn't to radically change PERS, although it needs to be changed, but to get the conversation going. The PERS fund, the amount of money that PERS has to invest is about $26 billion. It has what's known as an unfunded liability of another $12 billion. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but an unfunded liability is money that our retirement system owes to the retirees, but it's an actuarial value. In other words, it's actually a mythological value based on certain assumptions. And we as a state, and it's just getting bigger, it's not getting smaller, we, the taxpayers of the state, are on the hook for that. And unless we do something about it, it's just going to get larger, and someday think Detroit. And the difference between us and Detroit is we don't have an art museum to sell. It's going to come back to you. I don't know if you're following the news on Detroit. There's big, the unions want the state government to liquidate the art museum. I guess I don't think they should. I mean, I don't want to see it, but we don't have that art museum to liquidate. So that's something that I'd like to do. And then finally, and I think this goes to the point I made earlier about the treasurer, is I want to grow the office, and I want the treasurer to be to take an interest in the state's economic development. Right now, this has been relegated. It's been delegated, but it's been relegated to the governor's office of economic development. And I have not heard a lot of good words about it. I can tell you, I was on the governor's trade mission to Israel about 2 or 3 months ago. It was a great trip. I really enjoyed it. The weather was fine. We got to see all the sights of the old city. We got to go to an Israeli Air Force base. But I really question how many economic initiatives came out of that mission, out of that trade mission. And I would really like to see, if we're up to me, and it may well be, I'm going to put together a sales force of about 10 people, and I'm going to keep everybody here. I'm going to send them out to California and have them start knocking on doors. That business should be coming here. I want to see our state looking at new initiatives for economic development. We have this unmanned vehicle, the drones. We've been tasked to do something with it. But if you look into it, it's what we call an unfunded mandate. They said, you go do it, and you pay for it to come back to us and report to us. At some point, something may well come of it, but there's nothing there now. I'd like to see us grow our education institutions. One of the tasks of the state treasurer is to oversee scholarship funds, the Millennium Kinney-Wynn Scholarship, the prepaid tuition, the college savings program. And I think that's great, and I will do my best to expand that. But I also want to see us focusing on what's going on in higher education at the universities. We're not going to get people to come to our state and start businesses unless we have the intellectual firepower to not only advise them, but to help them. And can I do that? The answer is yeah, if I want to. I mean, there may be people who try and stop me, but I can tell you that I will be an independent voice in Carson City. I will work for you, for Nevadans, not the favored few. I will see to it that we, as a state, not outsiders, benefit from what we produce here. And ultimately, I hope to really return Nevada. I know if you remember, we at one point were one of the fastest growing states in the nation. Right now, we're on the top of the unemployed list. We're, I think, second or third on the mortgage foreclosure list. And is there a reason for that? Yeah, it's everything you see. But I want to see that change, and I want to see us back to where we should be. Those of you, I think, who were here early got my present, which is the little postcard. If you haven't, I'll make sure you get one. The website is danfornevada.com. There's a comment box there. For those of you who are interested, Connie mentioned that I've written some books. This one called Principles of the American Republic. I consider myself a conservative, and every Republican in the state's a conservative. What's a conservative? I think there are four indices of conservative. One of them is for less government. We don't need the government we do need a government. We don't need them in all aspects of our lives. I'm a great believer in local control, and I think why? Because all of you are here. You can watch. You mentioned it. You can serve on local boards. You can work on government projects. You are responsive. You are the best judges of whether your government, our government, is doing what it should be. Third, I'm a great believer in free enterprise and private initiative. I've started a couple of businesses. One worked out well, another one is still in solution. One is we won't talk about. But at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs who sign the front of the check are the ones that make a difference in our economy. And I further believe, as I said, and as Republicans, as Tea Partiers, I believe we've got to stop talking about the social issues. I know everyone wants to talk about it, and I don't say they're not important. But we cannot, if we continue to talk about those and we continue to put them in the headlines, this is Barack Obama's and the Democrats' forte. They love talking about social issues. And if we do, we will lose. And regardless of what you may think or want to think, or what your principles are, we cannot make the changes that we would like to make in our economy and our society unless we get elected. And it's just that simple. I think we've got a great chance this year. Our president has broken one promise after another. I think this health care system is a disaster. I won't talk about some of the security issues, but we have a real shot. And I think we've got to, I'd say let's focus on those things that are important and get the message out to the public and say this is what we stand for and this is what we will do if elected. And I say I am open for questions. Hopefully I haven't consumed too much time.
You're good. You got 20 minutes.
Okay, good. But I hope you'll take a look at my website. You feel free to ask me any questions now. But as I say, I'd like to really, I think that the State Treasurer's Office is an important one. It's down ticket. Most people don't get past the governor, lieutenant governor. But I hope you'll think about what we can do if we have someone in office who cares and wants to make a difference. So, thank you. I'm going to start here and then we'll go here. Okay, go ahead, sir.
When you talked about downplaying the social issue,
Yeah.
Does that include immigration?
I don't, I have my feelings on immigration. I think that we as a country have to come to some sort of consensus on that. I wouldn't say it's downplayed. I think we should solve it and move on. It's not strictly relevant to, the Treasurer's Office, but I think it's a real issue that we need to discuss and we need to come to some sort of a resolution. Yeah.
It's not relevant to money in this state?
It's strictly speaking, it is relevant, okay, but it's not, in the end, what was your first name?
I'm Gary.
Gary, yeah. Gary, I have to prioritize. Okay? In other words, as Connie said, she was looking at her desk, there's lots of issues that we can go in. And I would rather, focus on jobs, on education, on housing, which to me are really critical issues. And I'm not saying immigration isn't, because it is, but there's only 24 hours in the day, and there's only so much political willpower in the state. And I want to look at those issues that I know will touch everybody, and then you can make your own decision. But to me, what's really critical is you have a job. That to me is number one. Number two, excuse me, is that you have housing. You can take care of your family. 3 is you have education. Your kids will be educated, and then you can take on immigration. You can take on some of these other issues.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's just my own. Yes, ma'am. Oh, well, hold on, I promised the gentleman here. Next.
How do you plan on working with PERS when they won't even comply with a court order to release information that they've been told they have to release?
Your question is a good one. They act just the number one question is how am I going to work with PERS? Okay, they actually were forced to release some of that information, which had some fairly scandalous results. But it's a real tough issue, and but no one even wants to talk about it. I was up in Carson and I was talking with Randy Kerner, who is not representative here. Very knowledgeable about PERS. There's the unfunded liability. There's the fact that the number of people supporting PERS is declining. So in other words, you have fewer people trying to support more retiring public employees. There's also the fact that and this I found most mystifying. Just to answer your question, this is not easy. Is that we, as a state, if you look at any sort of retirement system, it's usually 50-50. I don't know if you're on private plans. You know, the individual contributes 50% and the employer contributes 50%. That ain't the way it is in the state. Is that as the amount of contribution goes up, back in the 70s, we made a deal, and that deal with the public employees. We know that you, the public employees, are underpaid, so we're going to contribute more to your pension plan. Well, as time marched on, the public employees of the state were actually paid closer to market. But at the same time, the amount that the state was contributing to their retirement plan kept increasing. It's now about 97%. It's staggering. And so you ask yourself, well, if you say, well, that's great, the amount of contribution to the public employees is increasing. Well, it's increasing because you're paying for it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's the way it is. Now, can that continue? No. I'll just say this: they say had ample opportunity to speak with the governor, and he I said, I like Brian, but he doesn't want to get involved in anything that's controversial. And believe me, PERS is controversial. So, I can tell you, I hope you sense from my comments tonight, I'm committed to making a difference. And I'm not owned by anybody. I welcome contributions, by the way. If you feel like donating, please do. But I will make independent decisions. And I think I'm not afraid of PERS. I think if you're a public employee, you should be afraid of PERS. Because every year you're going to be worrying, are these guys going to pay me? When I retire after I've worked for 30 years, am I going to get paid? Well, you may not. And that's what the public employees of Detroit are finding out, public employees of San Bernardino are finding out, and several other places. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So that's a general answer, but specifically, I intend to make it a public issue. I hope I'll get the unions involved, because they're the ones whose members ultimately will be the ones who suffer. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any fiduciary responsibility for the budget?
I don't. I have my own budget for the office, and I'm not inside now, but I'm pretty sure I can do with a lot less than what's there now. The budget is set by the legislature, actually by the governor. The governor, thank you, sir. Yeah, one second, water. Thank you. The governor gives its budget message. The Assembly and the Senate react to it, and the final result is what comes out. I think there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in there. Can I tell you exactly what it is? No, because I haven't gotten in there, but I can tell you in the Treasurer's office. What is this $50 million fund doing? What is this there was another news article, I didn't mention this, but there's another fund, yet another fund called the Catalyst Fund. This is the Nevada Journal pointed this out. They've given away nearly $7.1 million. They have contracts for $200,000. What is this? It makes no sense. And I think it's pervasive throughout what's going on. We have a government, we have a state government that, does okay, but is by and large run for the favored few. And I want to see that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, the governor presents a budget and the legislature either yeas or nays and appropriate.
They work very complicated. Yeah.
Okay, so is there any state-level government official who is responsible for telling them where there's going to be problems down the road with their budget? Like Medicaid?
This is something I'd like to do. As I said, it's the state treasurer has been a political partner in things. Okay, I want to change that. And nominally, what you're talking about happens in committee in the legislature, both in the Assembly and in the Senate. Clearly, it hasn't been all that effective. And I would like to go there and I'll say, here's, I'm not, as I said, I'm not owned by anyone. I think you got problems here. I think you got problems here. I'm a big proponent of education, and I don't know that our education dollars are being spent wisely. And I'd like to say, here's what we ought to do. So, yes, sir.
I recently moved here from Washington State.
Right.
And they have a state auditor.
Yeah.
Do we have one here?
We have a controller. And he is, it's actually, he's running for state treasurer, is an accountant. And that's fine, but I haven't heard, let me ask you a question. How many people here know who the state controller is? I'm not going to tell you because I don't want you to vote for it. But no one's ever heard of her. I don't know what I know what she does. She does the books. But that's all. She's been waiting to run for treasurer. And heaven knows what else she's doing.
Also, he's running.
She's running against me.
She is. Oh.
Yeah.
We all know.
Okay. Good. What you do? Yeah. Tim Walton. Yes, ma'am.
But she's a Democrat.
She's a Democrat. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, do you expect a primary challenge?
So far, I haven't gotten it. A little bit of inside baseball is the governor, when he started out, wanted to have his own slate. And I'm sure you know some of this, is he anointed Mark Hutchison to run for lieutenant governor. Well, that blew up in his face. And there's going to be a real, if you Sue and Mark are actually debating up in Elko this weekend. I think Sue's going to win. I like Mark. Mark's a very genial guy, very nice guy. But Sue is on fire. And I think, he and she's, we were up in Ely at the Lincoln Day breakfast, and Don Bath, who's the committee, the party chairman there, said, no, I want you all, in the spirit of Ronald Reagan, not to insult any Republicans. And Sue came over to our table and said, Reagan Schmagen, I'm going to call on the health care issue. So, but he tried to run a couple of people against me. The first one, a very nice guy, he was a former treasurer about 20 years ago. And I think he said he would help me. But he's about 73, 74 years old. He has an RV and has a girlfriend. And he said, there are a lot of things on my list. Running for state treasurer is not one of them.
You're saying Sandoval tried to recruit this guy to run against you?
Yes.
Well, that's an endorsement.
It is. You're right.
For us.
We're kind of mad at Brian.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm a state party official, so I don't want to say anything negative, but there's issues there. Yes, sir.
Okay, if you achieve this office and you hire 10 more people who will be going on the first system and everything else, how will we afford those 10 extra people that you're going to send to California?
Hire about 20 people.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work. Pardon me? Yeah, I can tell you is, there's just a lot. I'm not.
So you're not adding?
No, that's right. Yeah.
Using your resources better.
Yeah, and I would love to, this governor's economic council. It sounds great. Let's promote the economic development of our state. I want to do that, but these guys aren't doing it.
And we need to take things from California. So.
Yeah, we do, absolutely. I mean, why go to Israel or the Philippines or Canada? I've got the 5th largest economy in the world, about 45 minutes that way.
So long as they don't bring their political
Well, these are all business people. So, yeah, but no, I'm not, it's...
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. One last question? Yes, ma'am.
You said you don't think our education budget dollars is being spent wisely. Can you tell us what you might be able to, what change you might be able to bring there, or where you would focus the light? Or...
Yeah, these are sort of generic, and I think I'd have to really get into it, be more specific. But I think we spend far too much of the budget on administrative officials rather than on actual teachers, and I think that needs to be looked at. I think instruction in the classroom, you know, I'm not a teacher, I admire teachers, but there's great teachers, there's good teachers, there's okay teachers, and there's bad teachers. And I think the unions have just put up roadblocks to keep a lot of these bad teachers in place. And, you know, all of us have had bad teachers, and there's nothing worse than a group of, you know, 3rd and 4th graders or 8th graders or even in high school who has a bad teacher. I mean, it's just not acceptable. I think we can do a lot better job on that. There's one other area too, which I thought, I think, you know, in terms of, and I think the whole charter school movement, I think it's a good movement. I think that we can, and this sort of reflects the other two, is that we can replace some of our public schools with some charter schools and probably save more cost. So I think, to me, education is absolutely critical. It's vital to our country, to our state, reasserting itself both socially and economically. I just don't think our education dollars are spent wisely or as wisely as they should. So, thank you very much.